Welcome to EverydayFI, where we explore the lives of everyday people pursuing financial independence. I'm your host, Meghan Combs, and I'm here to show you that you don't need $1 million book deal or a famous blog to reach FI early. By talking with real humans, you'll see how you can forge your own path to financial freedom the everyday way. Before the episode starts, I just want to say that I am back from my June Red X month, actually a little earlier than I planned because Mitch and I wanted to record this episode, and Mitch is super excited. He's super pumped about this episode. So we're going to be talking about the middle class trap, fallacy in our opinion. But just to tell you about the show, the next interview that's coming out is going to be with Ingrid, and that will be coming out on July 7th, and that's part 1 with her. Also, just to note, this episode that we're recording today is going to be a little bit rougher than normal because we wanted to get it out soon. So we're literally recording it the Saturday before it comes out on Monday. So let's jump in and talk about this supposed middle class trap after a word from our sponsors. And we're back. Okay, Mitch, so for those who might not know what the middle class trap is, I'm going to explain it a little bit if you don't mind, because I actually literally listened last night to the BiggerPockets Money episode on this called The Middle Class Trap That Could Keep You from Fire, How to Escape It. It came out January 28th. I will link it in the show notes. Go ahead and listen to it if you want, but that's where the rage started for me. When I listened to this episode, I was like, what? I don't understand what's going on here. So, Mitch, do you want to talk about what the middle class trap is?
Boy, I am so hot and bothered, and I have never been so excited for like Rage Joy to come out via microphone because this has driven me insane. And January, you mentioned, I actually think it may go back further than that when this nonsense started to show up. And I want to give a disclaimer. I am a massive Scott Trench fan. I literally gave away like 25 copies of his book to some high school youth that were in this entrepreneur class that I went and did some teaching about real estate investing at. And I'm a huge fan, but I do not know where this came from. I have some ideas, but it would just be speculation. So in any case, the middle class trap has been defined a few different ways. But what it really started out as is this kind of concept of this alleged 35 to 40-year-old person, so people in our age range, waking up one day and going, wow, I've done everything right. I did what I was supposed to. I put money into my 401k, I invested in my Roth IRAs, and because I bought a house when I was younger, it's built up in equity, and here I am with a $1 or a $2 million net worth, and I can't do anything with it. And it is this complete and utter nonsense that podcasts like ChooseFI and ironically BiggerPockets Money, those who have allegedly not coined the term middle class trap, but boy have they shouted it from the mountaintops. They themselves spent several, and I mean maybe a dozen, maybe even somewhere between a dozen and 2 dozen episodes talking about the mechanics of how we can get access to money before the age of 59 and a half. And yet, somehow, some way, for some reason, they started spouting this garbage off and have just like ignored facts that they know to be true. So that's the alleged middle class trap. We wake up and we're stuck.
Yeah, and I will tell you, when I listened to this episode, so apparently it came from a survey that they sent to their audience, and they said there was 2 top concerns with them, and one of them, like the top one, was the middle class trap. And the thing is as a product manager, like we know very, very intimately that when you send user surveys, the type of questions you ask really matter because you can ask questions that are very leading, that will lead to an answer that you want that maybe fits within like a marketing scheme that you might have. I don't know if that's what they did, but like that's kind of what I'm feeling from this because the middle class trap sounds very clickbaity, and I have a very distinct feeling that their audience didn't come up with that term or maybe one person did, and Scott and Mindy were like, oh, that's a great term to like reel people in. But that's where it originated from, is what they said in this episode. So, but again, when they started talking about the type of person who's in this supposed trap, they said that it wasn't just people like 35 to 45. It was also the married couple, the one who bought the home, the ones who have newish cars with car payments, the ones who have 2.5 kids with a dog. And I was like, that's not a FI family. I mean, sure, it could be, but like that's the average American family that you're describing right now. That's not a FI family. And I'm not saying that a FI family doesn't have a home and cars and a dog and kids, but I'm like, if you're talking about an average family, they're usually the ones who are going to retire at 65. So none of this really matters. And then I was like, okay, maybe what they're seeing as the trap is that this average family finds FI later in life and then feel trapped because they don't know anything about FI and how to access their money. And so they feel trapped because they did everything right according to the average American, but they don't know anything about this. But the problem with that is that they didn't say that explicitly in the episode, right? Like that, these are all things that I was like, well, maybe this is what they're getting at, but they're not being explicit with it. And so it was really like a little bit confusing. And I'll let you respond to that before I launch into other things that I noticed about that episode, because there were other things that Scott Trench said that I was like, what? Okay. So I'll let you respond first, though.
I am so excited to hear whatever those things are, because it's so hard to respond to what you said, because I feel like there is no way to record this episode with you and I without some version of word vomit between the two of us. And I think it's completely okay, because I honestly think that you and I, and what we heard from Brad Barrett, that emotion, that rawness that came out, I think that we are personifying the vast majority of the people that have come in touch with this nonsense from the FI community. So I do think you're right. I think you're absolutely right that there is a semblance of truth to the fact that there are everyday normal people who don't know squat about FI. And there's even those who know about FI. You and I know somebody in common who, in our private text group that we are in, said, I actually think the middle class trap is real. But then she actually looked into, read, and came to understand and went, oh, these are the facts. I'm going to follow facts, and I'm going to choose to work on this emotional thing that I had, to push that aside and be done with it and move on, because now I understand how I can get there. Now, here's what I think is really interesting. You have a nice audience, large enough that advertisers are paying you revenue. I think it is incumbent upon us that you and I have a responsibility to not allow something like this to ever have come out of our mouths without like an apology and or like a correction, or here's the ways that we can acknowledge maybe you feel this way and your feelings are valid. However, here are the facts. If I was you, I would anchor to these facts and figure out how to get your emotions to follow over some period of time to accept that this is true and real. And so when you have as large of an audience as BiggerPockets Money has, and you spout this off, and you know, like Scott Trench and Mindy absolutely know how to do a Roth conversion ladder, how to use HSAs, and that there's a good chance we're arbitraging our income, because just you and I, high earning households, right? So we're taking the benefits of all the tax advantages today by doing pre-tax 401ks and IRAs and all this stuff, knowing that when we retire early and we choose to draw off those IRAs, we're probably going to be in a way lower tax bracket. And therefore, even if we didn't fully pull off a Roth conversion ladder, even if we just took out the money, we might land in a 8 to 9 to 12% tax bracket. And oh no, pay a penalty. Who cares? It's 10%. Like, do I want to pay it? No. Will I? Yeah, if I had to. But still, all along the way, we got tax-free growth this whole time. And so when we take out that one piece comes out earlier, maybe we get hit with 10%, we still won. So, like I said, I don't even know if I answered your question. I am so fired up and worked up. This has bothered me for 6 months, and now I get to yell about it on the radio for the first time ever, and gosh, it feels good. So thank you for coming out of your Red X retirement, by the way. I coined that term in my mind. Thank you for coming out of it early to do this. And yeah, I don't know. What do you think? I feel like this is how this whole show is going to go. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, no, I don't mind. I was the one who suggested this because, as you alluded to, Brad went on to BiggerPockets Money to talk about this. Brad from ChooseFI, and he also has an episode on ChooseFI about the middle class trap. I will say I have not listened to that one yet, but I did listen to Brad's response to the middle class trap with Scott and Mindy. And I have a few thoughts about that episode too, but I'm going to talk about that a little later. I want to go back to the first episode that I listened to about this that was on BiggerPockets Money from January. So the way that Scott and Mindy talked about getting out of this trap was very tactical. And the interesting thing is, like, in this original episode, they didn't talk about the mindset shifts that have to happen to actually start selling stuff, which is what their rhetoric is now. They didn't talk about that. I can tell that they changed their rhetoric over time as they were probably getting feedback about this topic. Again, this is all speculation, so it just looks obvious, but I don't know. It could just be speculation. So in this original episode, they're not talking about like, oh, we can't spend our money because we were savers, blah, blah, blah. They don't really touch on that at all. They just talk about the tactical stuff. But the tactical thing that Scott said that I was like, what? Was stop maxing out your 401k, only get the match, which is sure, fine, whatever. Stop maxing out your HSA, which I was like, what? No. And then pay down your mortgage. And I was like, no, dude, what? And he was like, that's what I would do. And I was like, why? Because you want to be mortgage free? That doesn't, what? Like, I don't understand. That math ain't mathin', bro. Like, that doesn't work. And I was like, and even if you do want to be mortgage free, which is totally valid, there's a third option where you take extra money and you invest it in a brokerage and let it grow for 10 years and then take that money after 10 years and pay off the remainder of your mortgage. That, like, I was like, what? And even Mindy was like, nah, son, I'm not going to do that. So I don't know. I thought that was really weird.
Very, very weird. And it's funny you bring this up. So again, let's label this as speculation, but I wrote a note that said, I feel like what we're looking at here is you attract, okay? We attract in this world what we project, okay? And what I think is maybe Scott is feeling something that, like, he will not sell his principal. He didn't feel comfortable with where he was. And so therefore he went out looking for that in his community, and he got some of that feedback back. And so into the tactics. I think it's, again, this is insanity to me. I understand where you reach a certain point in your FI journey and you may no longer want to contribute above the match to your 401k. I personally believe that next year, 2026, I will only likely put in enough money into my 401k to get the match and then continue to further fund my brokerage account outside. I may not, we'll see, because I do have enough money to completely bridge all the gaps that I need in my brokerage account and with my real estate to where I probably can continue to take that benefit and Roth convert it later. But I'm getting to the point where I'm worried about running into not being able to convert it fast enough and running into RMDs. But I think that's probably something I can math out. Either way, staying on track. The HSA thing this is just it's literally laughable. It is just absolutely laughable and insanity to me. Every day we go to Target and we buy everything from contact lens solution to cold medicine. We go to the chiropractor, collect up the receipts. This is not complicated. And it's why I go back to this. We have a responsibility to acknowledge, okay, maybe you feel trapped. And then if we have the answers, and boy, do those two have the answers. They had, and they have a responsibility, I believe, to give the answer to the test. And for whatever reason, it's willful ignorance. I don't know what it is. Choose not to. So these tactics make no sense. And paying off the mortgage early, I do believe there is a case to be made an absolute case to be made. So I'm sitting on a 2.75% mortgage. I do think there's a case to be made when you're all the way to where I am, which is I've reached financial independence. I'm trying to finish off my FatFi journey, and I'm closer to it than I realized, actually. But it could make sense for me to pay off my mortgage today. And I know that sounds crazy. And it would turn me into FatFi overnight. Think about that. I would become FatFi overnight if I paid off my 2.75 mortgage, because I don't have what you described, Megan, the benefit of time to put the money in a brokerage account, let it build up for 10 years. I'm going to be FatFi in 2 or 3 years, no questions asked. I might actually be there today, depending on how you look at drawdown. But if I paid off my mortgage, game over. So it's a really interesting thought where that is the one point where it makes sense. But I would never truly advise you what to do. But if you were asking for my feedback, I would tell you, Megan, I wouldn't pay it off because of where you are in your journey. You got time on your side. I'm out of time. So technically I could do it now. Again, you're just going to keep getting word vomit out of me. Anything in there you want to talk about? No,
that's fine. I mean, that's a really good point that these strategies are very personal. And I do want to qualify that in that episode, Scott and Mindy both said that. Scott did say, like, you guys are going to hate this idea. He's like, because it goes against everything that the personal finance gurus say. So I will qualify that he did say that, and that I think it is a personal decision for him. And I think he also mentioned that all of this is very personal. So I will say that. But I think what got me was the not contributing to the HSA, because that, no matter where you are in your journey, is going to be extremely valuable. And it's not that much money, y'all. Like the top, end of it, if you're a couple, is $8,700, $8,000. I forget what it is, but it's something around there. And it's not that much money. That's really not that much money. And let me just tell you a personal thing. Like, if I hadn't been maxing out my HSA, if I had been paying down 3% mortgages instead, I wouldn't be able to have a child right now.
Oof.
Yeah. Like that. I mean, that's a big gap because all of my liquid net worth would be trapped in a house, right? Like there's the real trap. Like, so, yeah. And I was thinking about that. I was thinking about what are the real traps that you can get into. So you mentioned RMDs. I think that can be a trap, right? Which is required minimum distributions. This is something that when you reach a certain age, I believe right now it's 72 and a half, something like that, you have to start drawing down a certain amount from your pre-tax accounts. So traditional IRAs, 401ks, you have to start drawing down because the government wants their taxes. So you might end up paying a really big tax bill when you're in your 70s and beyond. That is a trap because you can't get out of it. Once you're there, you can't get out of it. You have to do it. So, I also think, keeping up with the Joneses, that's another trap you can get into, but you can get out of that one. So that's, pretty easy to get out of that one. So I guess I do want to make a really funny comment. So I was listening to this last night. My husband and I were packing because we're literally about to go to the airport in like an hour after we stop recording. And I was kind of listening to it while we were packing. So he was also listening to it. And he was like, how many times are they going to use the phrase middle class trap? Stop trying to make fetch happen. And then we got to joking that it almost felt like a drinking game. I was like, okay, every time they say middle class trap, take a shot, because they said it like every 5 minutes. And so that's why I was like, this feels very marketing schemey to me. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that in.
It 100% feels marketing schemey to me too. And I hate it from the depths of my soul because, again, I really have loved, and respect Scott Trench. But there are two moments in BiggerPockets Money history and BiggerPockets history where they've given me pause. And this is one of them. And the one that came prior to it is somewhere around a year ago. Scott posted an episode on BiggerPockets Money. And the easiest label I could give it is destroying syndications, the real estate and multifamily primarily syndications, and how there's all these problems with them and the mechanics with them and where that marketplace may be going. And I've actually had private email exchanges with Scott Trench about syndications because I invest in a few of them myself. And the timing of one of them was really bad to the point where I actually lost my entire investment on it. But the other two, thankfully, it was a quote unquote smaller investment because I worked a deal where I got in. But I feel terrible because I brought my brother-in-law into it, so he also lost his entire investment, and it's just a kick to the shins. But it is what it is. But they put this episode out just hammering syndications. And what happens 4 days later? BiggerPockets rolls out a partnership with a podcast called, oh my gosh, something about syndications. Passive Pockets. Sorry, it's called Passive Pockets. And what is it? It's a syndication podcast series. So literally on Monday, we trash syndications. On Thursday, we roll out a new partnership for a podcast called Passive Pockets that has existed for years by the host. And BiggerPockets acquired them or partnered with them, and they moved it to be branded under BiggerPockets. How is that possible, right? Just it gives me pause. What do you genuinely believe? Then you, as the CEO of BiggerPockets, roll out a partnership with syndications 4 days later. Very odd. And then this is the second one. And I want to think better of them. I really, really do. But I think we have good reason to have this moment of pause. And hopefully they start to pivot. Now, you can respond to any of that if you'd like, of course. But I have something I don't want to forget. I wonder, part of what I wonder is the reason there are enough people saying, yes, I feel middle class trapped. Because if you look back 10 years ago, how big was the FI movement? You know, if you look at, ChooseFI's Facebook group today, there's 100,000 plus members. Had they had the traction, same level of traction with ChooseFI, didn't even exist 10 years ago yet, but if it did, how many people would have been in that Facebook group? That I really wonder. And the reason I bring this up is I wonder if there are so many more new people finding the FI movement because of how the internet's moving forward and online forums and all that maybe there's just a ton of people that showed up that have no education about the FI movement. They don't know all the details. And then this is where I'm really going with this. Think about the ChooseFI episodes and prior to the Middle Class Trap episodes of BiggerPockets Money and some of the other big podcasts that are out there. We've been talking about lifestyle design, how we can reach a savings rate, and the money just becomes a math problem, but let's really focus on how to enjoy our lives. How many episodes in the last 1 to 2 years have been contributed to the mechanics of the how? I kind of wonder if Brad and Jonathan and all these other hosts got tired of talking about Roth conversion ladders, because what more can you say about it? So like the episodes are out there. Go listen to them. We moved to lifestyle. So a newbie shows up, starts listening. They never hear about the mechanics of money. They just hear about lifestyle. They just hear about, pile it into your 401ks. Life's going to be good. And then one day they wake up and go, but wait, how do I use it all? When is the last time we truly belabored these points? And I think it's been a while. I don't know what you think about that, but it's a thought that I had this week.
Well, I'm kind of the wrong person to ask because I'm one of those people who found ChooseFI in their earlier days. It was 2019, and I think they'd only had a podcast for like 2 years. So they were still in the mechanics. And I also went back and listened from the beginning and caught up. So I listened to all of those episodes and then continued to listen. And then today, because I feel like I'm the advanced FI person, like I've got everything under control, I'm good. Like I don't really need to know the mechanics anymore. I kind of have gotten away from listening to the financial podcasts and gotten to like health and economic type podcasts, like Money with Katie, who she does more like broad economic and social construct type of discussions. So I don't know if the episodes are keeping up with. I do think that there was like one that came out on ChooseFI with Sean Mullaney, who is Brad's friend in the CPA, who is also like an internet friend of mine. He's a cool guy, like him. And they were talking about how to access your funds early. I think they talked about the 72T in depth about, I don't know, I think a year ago. But I think it's like those kinds of episodes only come out maybe every few months versus in the beginning, they were coming out every week with something that was very tactical and very like walk away with what can you do? What can you do? And so maybe, yeah, maybe we do need to bring it back because there's so many new people, or we need to tell the new people, like, make sure you start at the beginning with some of these things. I know it's going to seem like it's not relevant because it's so long ago, but it really is still relevant. And yeah, so you're making me think about like, do I need to bring on tactical stuff on my podcast? I just don't feel equipped because I'm not a CPA, I'm not a CFP, I'm nothing. I'm a taught myself on the internet type. So yeah.
I I would say, do you have a responsibility? I'm not really sure. There's probably a way that you can move some of those discussions, like in your question. By the way, this is like now an on-air production meeting for your show. I do think there's a world where when you ask the question to your traditional guests, because I don't count as that, but when you ask the question of your traditional guests, what's your path or what's your investment model, whatever you ask them, and they say, oh, we do passive index funds or we do some index funds and some real estate. You could also ask them mechanically, what's your plan, or when did you start, or when do you think you'll start looking at things like the 72T or the Roth conversion ladder to bring that attention. I think is maybe something you could do subtly to do that if you'd like.
Yeah, that's a great
And
idea.
I'm gonna
And I
yeah,
do want to, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I do want to say that I also am considering bringing on more expert voices. So I've gotten a lot of interest from people who are financial coaches who have reached out to me since I was on the ChooseFI podcast. I've actually had a lot of people reach out to me who are experts in the field. And so I thought about maybe bringing on some of them. And if any of them I connect with in a really great way, maybe bringing them on regularly to talk about some of this stuff. So that might be coming down the line. So I just want to say that.
that's awesome. I wrote a note that says ask Brad for a beginner's list because fortunately you and I have a direct connection to Brad, as does anybody who wants to reply to his weekly newsletter. He will read it and he will respond. But I think a while back he had asked the audience through probably the Facebook channel what the must listen episodes are. And one of the must listens that I suggested didn't make the list, which I was salty about, and that's okay. But maybe this is something that A, needs to be considered, and B, Brad needs to be updated on the website, and then C or 3, I don't know if I was using numbers or letters, but item 3 is maybe during some of the pre-recorded outros or intros that you have on your show, he has on his, maybe we point audiences to that. If you're new, a good place to start. It's hard to go back in arrears and listen to hundreds of episodes or popcorn through titles. Maybe we give you the answers to the test somehow. So if you're new to the community, you never end up feeling trapped. You should not wake up feeling trapped. If you showed up here because you said, I've been saving and investing for 15 or 20 years, I have all this money, but shoot, I'm 43 years old and I'm stuck. I can't even touch it. What was even the point? We go, you can start here. And there's a little link that takes them where they should start so they can learn these mechanics and go from paranoid to peace. Like, what a gift we could give newbies, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you think of that, but
No,
we
that's a
should do
great
that.
idea. Yeah, I mean, I can do that in this show, and specifically just how to access your money early. I can do the episodes on the 72T and the Roth ladder, because we're not going to go into that today on this episode, but it's pretty, I don't know about the 72T. That seems really complicated to me, and I don't know why you would do that over the Roth ladder unless you had to, but the Roth ladder is pretty easy. So I even have like a graphic that I made when I was on Instagram, like a little printout of how it works. And so I could even just put that up on my website somewhere and have that linked, because I'm happy to do that. I didn't like charge anything for it. It's somewhere in my, logs of files somewhere that I made. So yeah, I'm happy to do that. And I do want to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. But when we come back, let's jump to talking about Brad's reaction on the BiggerPockets Money that he was on recently. And we're back. Sorry, it's fun. We are doing this live, so it's really funny because normally I just like put in the little sound for the ad breaks, and this time I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna look at the time and say ad breaks. So anyway, that's why we're laughing. So Brad came on to BiggerPockets Money to kind of respond to this idea of the middle class trap. And again, like I said, I didn't listen to his response on his show yet. So, Mitch, if you have anything to say about that, please do. But my initial reactions to that was, again, I noticed that they were saying middle class trap a lot, but it's not an actual trap. It's a mindset shift that's needed. At least in this episode, that's what they were saying. And like I said, that seems like a rhetoric shift of some kind from the original idea, where now they're talking about how, oh, it's hard for me as a saver who's been saving for years and years and years to spend down my money and sell my assets. And to me, that feels like a separate issue from their original issue, which was like you have this average person who has been doing all the right things, and then they now realize that they want to retire early, and they feel like they can't access this money because they don't know how to do it. That seems different than I know exactly what to do. I just don't want to do it. And I think Brad's response during the episode was mostly empathetic to that idea until he said, "Get over it, you're an adult." That rubbed me the wrong way. And Mitch is laughing because we talked about this beforehand. Like, that rubbed me the wrong way. And it also was very incongruous with who Brad is as a person. And to me, I'm like, I feel like he was getting frustrated with the conversation because we don't know what the live conversation was right? So they edited it. I actually heard a couple editing choices that they made in that episode that made me scratch my head. For example, Brad was like obviously talking, and they cut in the middle of him talking and inserted something that Scott said, and then Brad started talking again, and I could tell that that wasn't exactly what happened live, or at least I'm postulating that it isn't, just the way that I edit a podcast, and so I know how this works. It just sounded very like Brad got cut off really, really quickly, and then I don't know. Anyway, I feel like Brad was probably getting really frustrated, but that did still rub me the wrong way, and I that's not really how psychology works. If this truly is a psychological issue that you can't touch your money, just saying get over it is not really that helpful. So, Mitch, I'm going to let you respond now, though, because I know you got thoughts.
Yeah, this is a classic, just different lenses. Like, this will be the first point where, like, I'm Team Edward, you're Team Jacob, and I was going to find a way to get that into this podcast one way or the other. So here's the deal. I think this is all about in the eye of the beholder, what you heard, what you feel, which is a classic based on your life experience. Everything in your background informs the way that you see, view, and take in the exact same content that I see, view, and take in. And I re-listened to the episode, which I was going to do anyway, but I re-listened to it listening for two things. And I heard neither of them. One is I have also edited podcasts. I still never heard whatever it was that you were talking about, but I listen at 1.25x, so it's slightly faster, and maybe I missed it because of that. And then the second thing is I listened very carefully, and it was like 30 or 40 minutes into the episode before that happened, and there had been so much empathy, so much I understand that, so much I get where people are coming from. And then I think you're right. I think eventually it's just like the frustration was reached, and Brad was just like, at some point you have to get over it. And I actually completely agree with that. At a certain point, for you, Megan, for me, Mitch, and for people that have been exposed to all of this, and we understand the concepts, we have to choose at a certain point to trust them. And if we're not going to trust them, maybe not dismiss them and just say, well, I'm trapped. Instead say, okay, I mentally I understand how I'm supposed to get there, but emotionally, my heart and soul, I'm just not there yet. How can I get there? And so I think the just get over it was about the math, and it sounded like it was about the emotion. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just too much Team Edward here, and you're actually the one that's right in your chair. So I don't know what you think about that. And I have something else from this episode that I want to talk about related to real estate, and we'll get there. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was mainly, like you said, it's our perceptions shape our realities. And, you know, I actually grew up with a lot of get over it type of, mentality, but it was for much more serious things. And so I think that might have sparked something in me. I will say my husband
Mm.
also reacted the same way. He was like, get over it. He was like, he was like, my initial reaction to somebody saying get over it has me doing the middle finger at them. And I was like, see, like that's a very strong reaction. So I can't be the only one. Like there must have been other
Yeah.
people in the audience who were like, whoa, Brad, come on. So but again, I don't think that's truly Brad's essence. Like I think he was frustrated. And I think there is a point in time where you can try to work with a person and they just keep coming at you with like what ifs, what ifs, what ifs, what ifs. And there's a point in time where you just have to throw up your hands and be like, look, man, if you don't want to do this, then what the heck was the point of saving all this money? There's a point where you have to just get through those emotions and just do it. Just do it. And so, like that Shia LaBeouf, just do it. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Anyway,
I've not.
that's a oh
I'm
yeah.
just picturing him on Hot Ones. On Hot Ones when he did the chicken wing interview. It's one of my favorite things. And I'm also picturing him. He went through a really tough phase in his life. Maybe that's what it's from, where like he had some issues. And
Yeah,
that's what I'm picturing is him being filmed in not his finest moments.
yeah, no, I have no idea what this is from. It came out of like, I don't know, a meme back in 2018, 17, something like that, and where he's just going, just do it. And he's like doing this like whole pump thing. And I don't know if it's like a Nike commercial. Anyway, that's
Do not edit this out.
I'm not going to, don't worry. But that's kind of like I wonder if that's what culminated in him because I feel like Mindy was like, "Well, what about this? What about if somebody grew up poor? What about this? What about this?" And he was like, "You can what if me all day, but in the end, the math is the math. If you want access to your money, you have to do these things and if you want to retire early, then you're going to have to get over these emotions somehow and just do it. And if you need like therapy to do it, then do that, sure." And I think the thing is we as financial entertainers, which is what we are, like we are not therapists, we are not CFPs. Like, sure, Brad's a CPA, but he's not our CPA. He's not your personal CPA. He doesn't know our specific circumstances. There's only so much that we can guide you with without knowing you as a person, right? And so I think generic, like, mental mindset shifts is not always going to work for everybody. And so there is like really when you think about it that way, the only advice we can give you is you're going to have to get over these feelings somehow. I can't tell you how you get over those feelings, but that's the only way that you are going to be able to access this money and live the life you want to live.
Yeah, I think that's great. And to go all the way back to the beginning, I want to make sure in no way did I mean to say that response and Chris's response was isolated to just you. I absolutely agree. There's probably a bunch of people out there. I just didn't hear it that way. It's so interesting. And but the reality is like we take a lot of people know like the disc profile. I don't know the disc profile, but there's this personality survey called the personality index, and I'm relatively close to an expert at it actually, but I am a controller. And the easiest way to describe who I am is there is a correct way to roll up a tube of toothpaste. And what that means is if you go and Hulk squeeze it and it's all wrinkly, you did it wrong. Okay, there is a correct way to do it. And that'll tell you everything you need to know about me. So with that said, I spent 18 months in therapy working on my mind and all of my inside that was allowing me to make the shift that I made because I felt broken and I felt like something was wrong with me. So I absolutely do not dismiss feeling. I'm a huge proponent of understanding and accepting that everyone's experience and their feelings are as real to them as anything, right? And so in no way am I dismissing that. I'm just saying for me, the way that this brain works is once I put everything in its box, I go, yep, makes sense. That's how I'm supposed to feel. And I either land there immediately or I get there over some period of time. Okay, so with that out of the way, there's something in the episode about real estate that I want to talk about. And I'm curious as someone, you are currently a landlord, not for much longer. Spoiler alert, but not for much longer. I'm curious what you think about this. So I wrote this note that says, Around 14 minutes into the episode, they begin talking about this rental property or these rental properties. I think it was two of them. $500,000 trapped in equity and they're not cash flowing. So then Scott says something like, if you have a rental property that isn't doing better than average returns, and I'm going to just assume he meant 8 to 10% in the stock market, and he says, then what are you doing? And I said, bingo. Okay. So I think now both parties were already 14 minutes into the episode worked up and completely missed this concept of we dismissed the $500,000 in real estate equity and said it doesn't even count towards your FI number. And this is not a critique or too critical of either party. I just think it's really interesting. Three very bright minds, very, very bright minds, all who own real estate missed that $500,000 absolutely should have been included in the FI number, because there's no way. Let's be real for a second, Megan. Pretend you got all the way to 75% of your FI number. And the way to finish off getting there was to go, I'm stuck with these two properties that cash flow me nothing. But if I sell them and I capture the equity, it takes me to the finish line.
That is what I thought. When I am not a real estate person, so I was very confused. I was like, I get your primary residence not being in your FI number because you have to live somewhere. But rental properties, why wouldn't you add that? Because you can just sell those. Like, you don't need those. I mean, unless you're only taking into account the cash flow. But if you don't have any cash flow, why do you even have them? Like, just sell them. Sure, you lose a little bit of money when you do that. Of course, selling something you always do. But I did not get that part. And I just thought it was like something that I was missing because I don't know much about real estate. Like, you call me a landlord. I am not a landlord. Chris was a landlord. We no longer have tenants. Our house is selling on July 7th. Or it's his house really. But yeah, we are so done with that. So yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because I thought I was either like missing something or just didn't know what I was talking about.
No, what's funny is I only wrote this down just because I thought it would be responsible for us to talk about it briefly, to say that person, I think, had $1 million in retirement accounts, and then their goal was to get to 2 or 2.5. So they were like halfway or a little less than halfway in theory. But in reality, they had 1.5 less their expenses to sell and all that stuff with the home, or the two homes that were rental properties. But in any case, the other reason I want to talk about it is the middle class trap. I can't remember if they addressed this on that specific episode, but there's a second piece to this that I understand where Scott's coming from, but I think they are way too bothered by it, which is that this whole concept of, air quotes, nobody retires on the 4% rule purely. They all have some kind of an ace in the hole. An ace in the hole is described as a pension, some rental properties, an inheritance coming down the line, all these different things. And I don't dismiss that those things actually do get skipped. Social Security. Brad mentioned Social Security in the episode, that we skip out on giving credit to Social Security. So the concern I have is, for some reason, this concept of, air quotes, nobody does this, is conflated with middle class trap. And I think the two are separate and isolated. And I don't know how deeply you want to go into them, but the challenge I have with this is, take me, okay? My net worth, my investable net worth is one number, but yes, I have an income stream from real estate. But what's interesting is, if you take my FI number, the total income that I need per year to achieve my life goal, let's just easy math say it's $100,000. And we subtract out the fact that I have about 33 to 36% of my income stream coming from real estate and interest income. So I go from 100 grand that I need down to about 66. Okay, so that $66,000 for me is coming from the 4% rule, which requires whatever 25x 66,000 is, which is probably like 1.6, 1.7 million, right? For some reason, it bothers Scott, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, or if that was even in the episode. It bothers him that I, Mitch, am not going to early retire purely on the 4% rule, because my real estate and interest income for some reason counts as an ace in the hole. And I don't really think that's a fair representation of the situation, because a huge part of my early retirement would be the 4% rule for that $66,000. And the difference is, yes, I have real estate, but if I was quote unquote just going to retire on 66,000 and that was my 4% rule number, I'm still in theory using it. Do you get what I'm getting at there?
Yeah, like you're still actually retiring on the 4% rule. You just have backups, right? Is that what you're trying to say?
I No. Okay, so it's funny. I wouldn't even call them
Okay.
backups. It's all I'm saying is in this example I need 100 grand to live on. And 33 of it comes from an income stream. Yes, that's an
Oh,
investments
it's
that
a
I
four
make.
percent rule, but it's not just on your invested like investments. It's on your
Yes.
entire portfolio, which also includes rental properties. Is that what that's what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, I get it. I get it. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
It's just
go ahead. You can finish. I do have stuff to say.
it's just yeah, please do. It's just such an interesting thing, and again, for some reason, it gets conflated with this alleged middle class trap, which it's very clear that you and I both think is some version of nonsense, and it's so odd to me that we can't accept that, like, okay, I have a fine number of 100 grand in this scenario, and 33 to 35,000 of it, yes, it comes from an income stream, and the other 66,000 that I need in this example comes from the 4% rule. So why can't I just include me in the 4% rule, man? Like, let me in there. I don't understand why I don't count.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that bothered me about that was he said, "Do you know anybody who's retired on the 4% rule?" And I was like, that's not how data works, y'all. Like, you have to actually collect data from the FI community and ask people if they have retired on the 4% rule and how they did it to know the real numbers of our community and how that's working for people. Because there's so many different ways to do this that, like, I'm thinking of Keith Nugent. I don't know if you know him, but he goes to a lot of the FI events, like almost all the Camp FIs. He goes to all the FI events because he likes to go and travel and see his friends. He was the skydiver. I interviewed him in a previous episode. I can put it in the show notes. And he has a portfolio of like, I think 30 or 40 rental properties, and that's his retirement plan. That's what he lives on. Like, I don't, and I can't tell you if he has any investments, but that's his main retirement plan. And so are you telling me that he didn't retire on the 4% rule because he's doing it in like real estate investing? That, I don't think that's true. And then, what's the difference between having a, real estate versus living off investments versus, like, maybe doing the baristify thing where you live on half investments and then have a like lower paying chill job? Like, why is that not the 4% rule? Because it still equals 4% that you are drawing from different sources. So I don't understand that either. I mean, if they are like, we want a pure example of somebody who has nothing except their investments and they're drawing down, I mean, I'm sure that person exists. Like, why do they think they don't? Just because they've never seen one? That doesn't mean they don't exist, you know? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, they put a poll out to the group. It was more than just saying I've never seen one. They put a poll out to the group, and there is a big group of people, and honestly, nobody showed up. There were a few potential referrals that came in. I have a friend, Brandon Johnson, who I reached out to, and I said, you might be the person. And I forgot at the time he has a commercial rental property that dares to bring in like $10,000 a year in income. And so the rest of his FI number being made up from the stocks and bonds portfolio, drawing off 4%, just doesn't count. So the reason I brought this up was initial curiosity, but also the next kind of piece to this puzzle that comes out in this episode that we're discussing is that Scott says he cannot wrap his head around selling a share of VTI, VOO, VTSAX, plug in your total market index fund. He can't wrap his mind around selling a share for personal consumption. And he doesn't say for superfluous consumption, he means for making his mortgage payment or buying food for the house that
living
month.
his life.
And just living life, right? And so So I don't know. Like you can come right back off mute. Like, what is your
That
immediate reaction to
yeah,
that?
I'm like, then what were you doing? Like, what was the point of all of this then? If I mean, and that's that mental trap that they think that they are in, right? And I think that's where Brad was like, get over it. Like, I mean,
That
this
might have
is,
been it.
and it's like, what do you think regular retirees are doing? Like, that's what, like, do you just want to have, tens of millions of dollars when you die to leave to somebody? Because that's what's going to happen if you're not spending down your principal. And I don't know. To me, I don't know Scott's life. So I don't know what he's doing. He doesn't sound like he's stuck in a job he doesn't like. For me, as somebody who is stuck in a job that I wouldn't say I don't like it, but I would prefer not to be doing it. I would prefer to be fully retired and be able to spend my time as I want, not working. I would take that all day. I would sell VTI every single damn day if I could, you know? Like that's not a problem for me. So he has some other way of doing this that allows him to not spend it. Like it's all about, that matters more to him than keeping working or whatever he's doing that's working, which I guess is just running Bigger Pockets Money, although I think he's not CEO anymore. But
Correct.
yeah, and so I think that's just the difference between who Scott is as a person, who I am as a person, who you are as a person, who the audience that's listening to it, who they are as people. Like that's what it is to me. And yeah, I could not, there is nothing that I wouldn't do. I look at our liquid net worth every day and I'm like, could we live off of $400,000? Can we do that? I literally am like, can we do that? And then I'm like, hey, Chris, could we quit today? And he's like, no, we can't. And I'm like,
No.
dang it. Like I would be the person who'd probably spend my money too fast. Because I'm so over having to work corporate.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like I am not that person at all. I'm completely content with selling something to buy something. And if Scott Trench hears this, I hope he will consider this to be analogous to a situation. I would argue that him quitting his job at Bigger Pockets as the CEO with his income streams that he has in place, I would say he did just sell a very sizable share of VOO by walking away from his income. And I can tell you, I felt that way a year ago when, I mean, it was literally a week and a half after you and I met in Vegas at that group event. A week and a half or whatever it was, 2 weeks later, I went and told my employer I was leaving and I was selling my equity. So I had it both ways. And I'm guessing Scott probably had some equity in Bigger Pockets that he may have sold as well. I gave back my income, not knowing if I was ever going to get it again. That sure feels like selling a share of VTI to me, honestly. And I literally sold back equity that I owned in the company. I actually sold back shares of a company and gave up a very strong dividend stream from that business, which was ownership income that came into me for personal consumption. And that personal consumption was two or threefold. One, I went on a wonderful trip for 3 months. And two, I bought myself sanity and believed future mental clarity and freedom. All of that was purchased by selling my income back and giving it away and selling my shares back. I don't know if you see those two as not identical, but do you think that someone in Scott's shoes or some member in the audience who feels the same way might say, Mitch, I get what you're saying there. I could say, use that as a thought experiment to guide yourself towards being better prepared to sell a share of VTI in the future. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of what I was alluding to, that it's you are weighing in the balance one option and one action to another, and you have to do something to pay for your life. It's either working, it's either selling your shares, it's having real estate investments that give you an income, it's walking away from a job and getting that money that you and Scott got. That's selling something, as you said. Like you have to make a choice to pay for your life. And that is what it is. And that's what you have to come up against of what do you want to do to pay for this life? Like, what are you willing to do? I am so willing to live off of my investments that I want to do it like now when I'm not ready. And some people like Scott are like, I don't even want to touch that. And so you just kind of have to ask yourself, like, what are you willing to do? Like, if you really don't like your job, but you feel like, oh, but I don't want to touch this $2 million that I have in investments or real estate. So are you willing to just keep doing the job that you hate? You really have to think about that, right? And it's hard. It's hard because even I've spoke to a few people on the show that I feel like they feel trapped in their jobs. Now that's another trap you can get in, right? A real one where you might not like your job, but you feel trapped because your identity is tied to it, your income is tied to it. You don't you feel like you have more solid ground with an employer who's handling everything from your health insurance. They have all kinds of benefits, right? And having to, you know, push that away and do that all yourself, like that's a little scary, I could see. And so it's one of those things that I can understand feeling mentally trapped in a job. And I think there are ways to pull back from that. The person I'm thinking of is Casey J, who I forget which episode she was in, but I can link it. And I don't know if we talked about this in the episode. I hope we did, but she was talking about how she could probably walk away from her job now or at least go part-time. I know she just had a baby recently, like a year ago or something. And we even talked, I even was kind of trying to coach her, like, once you're done with maternity leave, like maybe you go to part-time, because she said she's basically there. She could just do that. And I'm not sure she did. I don't know. I need to get with her and catch up. But that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking of. Like, that's that mental trap that I feel like, I'm not going to speak for Casey, but I can see how you feel so tied to your job because it's who you have been for so long, and it is what has put food on the table and a roof over your head, that's hard to let go of. And I can see that.
Yeah. I don't remember Casey's situation either. I know that her baby was born in the last 6 months, and I don't know if she told us if she went back full time, part time, or somewhere in between. But yeah, I mean, 100%. That's what led me personally to therapy, to figure out like what is wrong with me, because on paper I have what any normal person would want. Any normal person would want. I was my own boss, with the exception that I reported to a CEO. We talked 1 hour a month for the financials and 1 hour a month for some strategy stuff, and otherwise he left me alone. Every other hour of my working day, I made very good money. I was a part owner in the company. I was very highly respected, and I felt like everybody was counting on me to be the face of the business, and I was. And I felt like letting go of that was going to be letting everybody down in ways that any legacy I had established would be torn down and destroyed. And so I did feel very, very trapped. Plus, on top of that, like, I was not all the way to FI yet. I knew when I quit I was going to be very close to lean FI, and then I was going to have to let the growth take me the rest of the way there. So I 100% equate the two as similar. And if Scott hears this, I really hope that he can think about that and say, you did cash in VOO. It just was in the shape of a letter and a number. W-2. You sold one huge share, your entire position of W-2, in the name of more time with your daughter, and I can't remember if his second child is a boy or a girl, and more time with his wife, and less stress from running that company, and drawing more enjoyment out of helping people with their financial situation, which is what his heart is drawn towards. And the vessel is BiggerPockets Money. So I hope you can see that. I hope the audience can see and hear that, and see that bridge being made between the two things, and find a way to harness it to better set yourself up to be able to sell a share. If you're not like me and Megan, who are both like, bro, I'm selling as soon as I get it. The reason I honestly, this is going to sound crazy. I literally thought, I kind of just want to go sell like $10,000 worth of VTI and go spend it on something stupid.
See how it feels.
Just to see how it feels.
Yeah.
to screenshot it right out of my Vanguard
It can
account.
be done.
And then the receipts, it's so funny. Like, and again, if the argument is, I don't know anybody who's sold a share to live off of for personal consumption. When I sold my income and when I sold my equity in the organization, I did buy a $17,000 trip to Hawaii. Now, granted, I hacked about half of it. We talked about that. And by the way, that was 12 days in Hawaii. And I brought my 16-year-old niece and my wife and son. So I did sell, and I bought that extreme and fun thing with it and a fireplace for my house. And I bought something else. I forgot what it was. But the rest of it I did jam into the stock market to help grow and accelerate me. So I'll say this. I don't think that I've exhausted every thought I have on this subject. I could sit and think out loud talking about this with you for another hour or two. But what else do you feel like we needed to hit on, if anything?
I'm pretty sure I hit all of my bullet points that are in the doc that I have. And, I think we have to think about what the actual traps are versus what this marketing scheme trap is. And I think as listeners to the show, I think just you have to think about your own life and where you feel this quote unquote trap potentially, and what kind of things do you think you can do to start to get out of that trap. And if it is something tactical, you're really lucky, because if it's something like, oh, I feel like I can't access my 401k money, there's a solution for that. Super easy. Like, you're actually, in a good place if it's something tactical. If it's something psychological, that's going to be a little bit more challenging, because there's a lot to unpack there for, how you see your money and how you see yourself and all of that. Like, that goes all the way back to childhood trauma, yo. And if you don't have a therapist, I would get one, because therapy is amazing. Mitch said he was in therapy for 18 months. I've been in therapy since 2017, so that's 8 years. And I am a whole new person. I'm not going to spend much more time talking about therapy, but just, it's so helpful. I literally don't think I would have been married right now if I hadn't been in therapy. I'm serious. Like, I was a totally different person 8 years ago. But yeah, that's I think about it for me. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on, Mitch, before we let people go?
No, not anything that wouldn't qualify as straight up 100% word vomit. So we'll let her go for now. And I hope this episode's helpful, and I will do my part and reach out to our friend and comrade Brad to see if we can find a way to regularly link newbies back to the mechanics, or long timers that need to be reminded of the mechanics because it's been a long time since they've really thought about them or considered them. And some of the mechanics take 5 years to work out. And you know what? I lied. One last really quick thing. Earlier on, you said, I don't know why you would do the 72T instead of the Roth conversion ladder. Interestingly, the 72T can be put into place today. The Roth conversion ladder, you have to be ahead of the game by 5 years for that whole seasoning period to work itself out. So in a world where you've got enough other assets to draw from, whether it's cash savings or Roth contributions, wherever, or real estate income like I have, whatever, you have some, but you don't have all of what you need. And you have to wait 5 years for the Roth ladder to season to where you can start to take those new contributions. That's where the 72T can kick in, where you could say, you know what, I need $15,000 a year to close the gap. You could start a 72T for $15,000 that takes you all the way to 59.5. Or maybe you say, I just need enough money to get me through 5 years, and you figure out what that number is. So anyway, all that to say, we need reminders of the mechanics too. And I think we can find a way to draw more attention to the mechanics than what we've maybe done as a community for the last year or 2 years, while still focusing on the lifestyle. This time, I promise I'm done. Don't ask me if I have anything more.
Okay, I won't. All right, everybody. Thanks, Mitch, for coming on and talking about the middle class trap fallacy. And I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to the EverydayFI podcast. If you're loving this show, here are some things you can do. Number 1, subscribe in your favorite podcast player and share the show with your friends and family. You can also find us on YouTube now. Some of the videos actually have our faces. Number 2, please leave a review. I am always looking for ways to improve the show. Number 3, check out my website, everyday-fi.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and leave comments for myself and the guest. Number 4, if you're interested in sharing your own financial independence story and connecting with other community members, you can find a submission form at everydayfi.com/podcast. And lastly, number 5, join my Patreon membership for only $5 a month at patreon.com/everydayfi podcast. This is a one-woman show, so every little bit of support really helps. See you next time as we continue to go down the path to financial freedom.